Hello, we are your hosts,
Sophie
and Abby, and welcome back to today's episode of Flipped. On today's episode of Flipped, we will be discussing Emmett Till's murder and if it was flipped.
If you're new here, we discuss a flip side of stories every Monday, so make sure to tune in for the next one.
Here's a little backstory. Emmett Till was a black 14-year-old boy who was kidnapped and brutally beaten to death after an incident that occurred a few days earlier at Bryant's grocery store.
Caroline Bryant stated that Emmett made inappropriate comments and touched her. Her husband and his half-brother were the ones who kidnapped Emmett and then brutally beat him to death. They then threw him in a river where his body was found.
Emmett Till's funeral was an open casket, and it showed just how badly these two men had beaten the young boy. This sparked a fire in the civil rights movement, and is well known as one of the main things that gave the civil rights movement a boost. Now on to the first question.
First question, how do you think the media might have reported the situation if the races were reversed? And what role does the media play in shaping public opinion?
First off, the mainstream media of Emmett Till's case really softened the violence that really occurred. On the other hand, the black press were really bold in truth-telling about what truly happened.
The white media also tried to make it seem as though the two men charged were innocent. Another thing the black media did was use Emmett Till's case as a way to speak out about racial injustice and segregation.
If the races were reversed, the media would have acted very differently.
Let's move on to the role of the media. The role of the media shapes the public opinion a lot.
The media decides on what story gets attention, like with the Emmett Till case when the white media tried to act like the black press wasn't a thing.
If something doesn't end up in the media, people might not even know about the issue.
The media can also shape how an issue is viewed.
Like in the case when the black media showed the more violent side of the case, while the white side tried to change it up and acted as if it wasn't a big deal.
In the end, media plays a huge part in shaping the public opinion.
Now, on to the next question.
What do you think the legal consequences would have been in that situation? How does race sometimes affect how justice is carried out?
Well, I think the legal consequences would have been very much different. I think they would have been arrested right away and convicted right away.
I also think that they would maybe even be sentenced to death.
Their race plays a big role in how justice is carried out. Many black people get unfair sentences just because of the color of their skin.
I feel like showing the flip side in this case really shows how easy these two white men had it after they murdered Emmett Till.
It really does.
Next question.
Would the public response have been different? Why or why not? And what does that tell us about racial dynamics in the U.S.?
I think the public response would have been different because the white people would have been more outraged and violent with what they said if it were two black men.
I agree. The public would have responded very differently because of their opinions on the black people at the time.
What we just discussed really shows that the racial dynamics in the U.S. are not great.
I agree. We shouldn't just change our opinions on people when they did an awful crime just because of the color of their skin.
You are so right.
On to the next question.
How might this have changed the direction or speed of the civil rights movement? Would people have reacted the same way to the injustice?
I think that this would have changed both the direction and the speed of the civil rights movement.
I agree. If the races were flipped, the civil rights movement would have slowed down and gone backwards.
Exactly. If two black men were to brutally kill an innocent white boy, just like the two white men did to Emmett Till, it would have done the opposite effect of what Emmett Till's case actually did.
Also, the people would most definitely have not reacted the same to the injustice.
I agree.
Next question.
What would it say about our justice system if the perpetrators were not held accountable? Can you connect that to any real historical events?
If the races were switched and two black men were not held accountable like the two white men, it would not be a good look for our justice system.
I agree. The justice system would look as though they didn't care about the young and innocent life that was lost.
And yes, a historical event that I can compare that to is not only Emmett Till's case, but also a bunch of the KKK killings.
That's exactly what I was thinking. They killed so many innocent people without getting punished.
Let's take a look at our last pair of questions.
What lessons should we take from imagining this flip situation?
We should take a variety of lessons, but I'll start with a very important one. While we imagined this flip situation, we found that if the men were black, they would have gotten a much harsher punishment and would have been treated very differently. This shows that people should not be treated differently and unfairly just because of the color of their skin.
I agree. Another lesson we should take from this is that just because the media says something does not mean we should believe it.
On to our last and final question. How can this help us better understand racial injustice today?
Well, it can help us better understand racial injustice today by showing our past and how much we have grown.
It also shows that we still have so much more to grow.
Well, I think that's all we have to say for today.
Thank you for watching and listening to today's episode of Flipped. We hope you enjoyed it. Tune in for our next episode. And again, we're your hosts,
Sophie
and Abbie, and we are signing off. Bye! Bye, guys.